PHLY Flyers presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name's Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. I have very little voice today. Nick Castellanos, what can you do?
You got to go to the good game.
What can you do?
I got to go to the awful game.
This is Charlie O'Connor, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat writer. If I had gone to Saturday's game, I'd still be in custody. So it's good that it worked out the way it worked out. And we're able to have a show today, Charlie, because today Danny Briere spoke to the media. We're going to do a Metro Division preview a little bit later in the show, but Briere spoke, and I think we should talk about it because he said quite a few interesting things.
Yeah, well, a lot of things happen at this camp, and Briere had to speak on a lot of things.
As someone brought up Ryan Johansson, I was just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I brought him up at the very end.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, oh, yeah.
And truly, it was one of those things where I had it in my notes as we need to ask about the Ryan Johansson thing. Less because it's the most interesting thing, and more because it is an outstanding piece of news that the general manager should have to comment on. But there were so many other things that we had to talk about that it literally just hit me with maybe 2 minutes left. The person was like, oh, God, yeah, I have to ask about Johansson. Right. And I'll get that in right under the buzzer.
It was, so he spoke on a lot today. But we will start with the most pressing matter. Jett Luchanko. They put out the roster today. We knew. You can do the math. Yeah. Okay, we're down to 22, 23 guys.
It was pretty straightforward.
They've made all the cuts. This is how many players would be on the roster. But they put out the actual roster today. It was the deadline, and Jett Luchanko is on it. Will make his debut as the youngest Flyer to ever do so. Pretty wild stuff. It doesn't seem like Danny has a ton. All options are open, which is, that's a smart thing. Like, yeah, if he's amazing right away, we're going to keep him. The 9-game thing, we'll see. Teams have also, he even said, like, without being prompted, teams have also done it the other way. Like, oh, yeah, like the Luka Spiza path. Well, we burned the year and that sucks, but you're going back anyway.
Oh, well.
Yeah, too bad about that.
The Paul Holmgren way.
Yeah,
Paul was actually, he was there today. He was up in the perch.
It's a scary looking guy.
He's a very nice man.
He's great. No,
he's a very nice man.
I've interviewed Paul Holmgren, and he's great.
Yeah.
He's just terrifying looking. Like him and Craig Berube, I'd be like, I don't belong here. Anyway, Jett Luchanko, Charlie. You asked a very good question that Danny avoided. I have my reasons why I think he did so. How do you think Jett Luchanko will be evaluated? Because he didn't answer it. And my guess is because he doesn't know.
That might be a little harsh, but there probably is some truth to that.
The coach is going to do whatever the hell the coach wants. And we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it depends on what Tortorella decides is important or not. And this goes both ways. Like, number one, it goes the way of, look, John Tortorella and his entire coaching staff has sworn up and down that Jett Luchanko was amazing throughout camp, and he's the coach, so I'm going to take him at his word. So on that front, maybe he doesn't have to look all that great for Tortorella to still say, I want him on this team. On the other side, though, and we've talked about this on multiple occasions, not just over the last week or so, but really over the last 2 years. However, 2 years, that's how long Tortorella's coached. Yeah. John Tortorella is a very fickle man in terms of how he evaluates players. So a guy who a week ago he thought was the bee's knees and the player that he can't afford to not have, he could very easily, after 3 days, decide, yeah, he's not an NHL player. I don't want him anymore. So there is an element probably from Danny's perspective of, look, a lot of my decision is ultimately going to be driven by a man who I don't know what he's going to think about this guy in a week.
Predict it?
Yeah, I don't know how to predict what John Tortorella's thinking.
And to be fair, like, right now he has made this team because of, one, his speed, and two, the details of his game.
The details of his game.
I wasn't going to say that today because I want someone to specify the actions.
I actually hopefully I will be able to get my article out on the Danny presser and also just, day one of Jett Luchanko being a Flyer. But I had a good conversation with Eric Johnson, who is one of the best quotes, if not the best quote on the team. Just a great guy. And I asked him that. Because at first I asked him, why he was so excited about Jett being on the team, and he gave me a really good answer about that. And I was like, look, we just talked to Danny, and Danny had mentioned about the details. Again, as someone who has been in the league for nearly 1,000 games, and you've watched so many young players come up, you know hockey as well as anyone in this room, far better than me, almost certainly. What are the little details that you've noticed that have impressed you? And he gave me a very good answer. So there are details. I'm not denying that.
I don't think they're making this stuff up.
I don't think they're making it up either.
I just think his ability to always be on the right side of the puck, be in between the puck and his net, and probably a guy with the puck. Yes, that's great. But that's an add attribute that doesn't blow me away. When they say they've been blown away since day one, that is a nice add attribute, and that means he's a good, responsible player. Yeah. There's lots of good, responsible players. What makes him above and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, you could, let me put it this way. I bet, and again, this just comes down to my view of, this is the way I think the bias comes about. Yes, if you are watching Jett Luchanko because you are going in with the belief that this kid is great, you can watch all of his shifts and focus entirely on him, and you can be like, wow, he did that little thing really well. He did that little thing really well. And then if you want the confirmation bias, that can build up in your head of, look how many great things he's done. But compare that to say, I bet if you wanted to, you could do the same thing, even during preseason, with Noah Cates. And you could probably find just as many little details that he did well in preseason, but the perception of Noah Cates' preseason is that it was bad. And the perception of Jett Luchanko's preseason is that it was great. And Noah Cates isn't going to be on the opening night roster, most likely. Again, it's because you came in looking for reasons to get excited about Jett, whereas someone like Noah Cates isn't a shiny new toy anymore. So he could have all the little details that he wants, and it doesn't matter because you weren't looking for them anymore.
I will, we've come to accept the dynamic of what the people in charge are going to be like when they speak. Jonesy, personable, affable.
Making jokes.
Yeah,
having a good time.
It's a great time. It's a good hockey conversation.
Oh, very much.
But it's a good
He's
time.
A smart guy.
Yeah. Danny, you expect him to just give you kind of boilerplate GM talk. Yeah. And John Tortorella tells you whatever the hell he's thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of happy with Danny Briere today saying, listen, I think all the guys came in great shape and they worked their asses off in Torts' camp. But the games, I didn't like the way our veterans played in the games.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that he made that comment.
Yeah. It was, and I thought what was very interesting was that, so Danny makes that comment. And then I later that day asked Torts, I was like, Danny said this about him thinking that some of the veterans were too casual in games, that Danny said they were in great shape and they were good in practices, but in games, a little too casual. And I asked Torts, does that concern you? You would think that Torts would be the one angry at that, and Danny would be the one who's like, nah, it's just preseason. And Torts defended the players. He was like, yeah, they probably could have, been a bit more competitive, but I've loved the camp overall. I'm not going to be too hard on them. It's like, wow, we're doing a little role reversal here.
That's because Torts does not care about the preseason, and that's obvious by the fact
he
that
only
he's
coached
one
game.
game.
It's fair.
And it was their worst game.
Fair point.
He does not care about the preseason. Yeah. He wants to beat the hell out of them in camp, and if they respond to that well, who cares?
Right.
And that's very much what I saw in this dynamic today. And Briere's just sitting there like, I don't know. Isn't the games what we get judged on? Not every some guys practice well, some guys play well. Really good players can do both, but some players are just I can't imagine. I bet you he gives a ton of effort, but Nick Seeler is a game speed player. Mm-hmm. And when there's dudes that you're not supposed to rough up your teammates. Yeah. Practices can be competitive and they can be physical sometimes, but they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
That really hinders what Nick Seeler does out there. I also don't want him breaking his foot blocking a shot in practice.
He might have done that.
Yeah, he did it in a preseason game. Something happened.
I don't think he broke his foot, but it seems like he's still experiencing numbness in his foot, which doesn't seem good.
No, it doesn't.
Especially given the fact they weren't on the ice Saturday and Sunday, and he's still not out there.
You probably want to be able to feel both of your feet.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, that's an example. Like everyone who looks great in practice and then they go out in the games. Well, we get judged by games, but it's the veterans. I would assume.
But going back to what your original point was, I did think it was interesting to hear Danny have a little, not fire, because he said it in a very professional, urbane way, but he was calling out some of his guys, not by name, but they knew who they were. You know, they're going to watch that presser and hear that quote, and they're going to know he was talking about them and that he's annoyed.
My take on it was like, those guys who later hear that quote, it will not be a surprise to them.
Exactly.
The way Danny said it, it sounded as if like, and
he talked to them.
Yeah, he's already had this conversation.
Yeah.
So I was happy with that, but your question about how he'll be evaluated, the answer bothered me because you set it up like, if he's playing well but has no points through the 9 games, and then he just jumped in and was like, well, it won't be on points. And it's like, we know. Yeah. We know that there's other stuff. Like, listen, we've talked about Tyson Forster last year. Could not buy a goal for those first 15, 16 games, but he was doing all the little things right, and Torts stuck with him, and it all worked out. 20 goals as a rookie.
Right.
We know that Jett Luchanko, and I, like, as someone who wanted him to make this team, I was never judging, he's going to score 20 points in the first 2 months. Like, I have very little expectation for his offensive output. And the way he just jumped in there was like, because he doesn't want to get to the other part of that question.
See, while I agree with where you're coming from, for me, it does matter how many points he scores. It very much matters to me. Like, if Jett Luchanko, after 9 games, has 1 point, and his underlying numbers are good, I will still be like, send him back. And the reason is because the whole reason why I wanted him to go back in the first place is because I want him to develop his offense. And if he's not scoring or creating chances, but he looks like a good defensive bottom 6 forward, I don't want him to lock himself in for his rookie season at age 18, convincing himself that his role should be a good bottom 6 defensive forward. I want him trying cool things. And if after 9 games, he is trying 0 cool things and not producing any points, I will again be saying, send him back, because I don't want him to get comfortable being a 25-point center. I don't.
And I agree with the premise. I do, clearly at, barely 18, you're not a finished product, and he has things to work on. We saw in the preseason, like, that offensive game is not caught up with some of his other skills. I just think that's where coaching comes in. It's on the coaches to make sure his mindset is be attacking. And it's on the coaches in practice, the skill coaches, everybody, to just kind of be working with him and him working, doing extra, so that he does not fall behind his development path.
Right.
It's going to be more work. He's playing in the NHL. Yeah. That is a full-time job. This is now this is your career. Yeah. Like, this is who you are. It's going to be hard, but it was always going to be hard. Now you're just
playing
doing
the NHL is real hard.
It's real difficult. That's why, like, there's only so many guys who can do it.
Yeah.
As we've seen, the Flyers have had few of them over the years.
But my point is that I asked that question not just because what I wanted, which I didn't get, what I wanted was him to give more specific benchmarks of, I want it to be like a situation where, we can send him out there against a good line and him, control play. Like, that to me is a specific answer. Instead, Danny went with a lack of specificity, in no small part because I don't think they yet know exactly what they are evaluating him on. It's more of like, do we have the gut feel after 9 games that we want to keep this guy? And I think that is more or less what they are going to be truly evaluating him on. For me, like, my ideal, if he stays, what I want from him in these 9 games are, like, for him to earn the 10th game in my book, I want the details to be there. I don't want him to be getting crushed. Like, if his expected goals for percentage after 9 games is like 41, then it's a no-brainer. You send it back. Like, he's getting killed. He's just not ready. Fine, he's done. But I don't want just him to have good advanced metrics and just to be passing the eye test via, his defensive play and his neutral zone play. I want to see some serious flashes of offense. I'm not saying I need him to be point per game. I want him to score a couple goals. I want him to have some nice assists where I can say, you know what? Okay, you've convinced me that you can learn the offense part of this on the fly. You can develop your offensive game successfully at the NHL level. You don't need to go back to juniors in order to make creative plays and learn what you should and shouldn't try at, not even at the NHL level, at any level. If he shows me that and he's holding his own at 5-on-5 from a territorial standpoint, then I will absolutely be like, yeah, they should keep him. But if he is just holding his own territorially, but not creating anything offensively, and he's very much the third wheel passenger on a line where, like, yeah, maybe Bobby Brink and Joel Farabee have made some goals together because they have good chemistry, and Jett's, 5 feet behind them getting back into the offensive zone when they're making offensive plays. Like, no. I wouldn't want him to stay in the NHL. I'd want him to go to a level where he can develop his offense. So he needs to show me that there's a path for him to foster that offensive creativity at the NHL level. Otherwise, I would want him sent back.
In terms of coaching and it being on the coaches, and it's funny because it's something we were joking about before the show, but I do think one of the situations that will help him foster that offensive creativity is power play time.
And he's on the power play.
And we saw today he is on the second power play unit.
Yes.
There's a center missing from the power play. Sean Couturier can spin. And listen, it's the Monday of the week the season starts. Lots of things can change. A little surprising Coots wasn't on the power play, though. I know last year was very bad. The way he ended, the offensive numbers, he looked slow. I get all of that. It's not as if you would be like, oh, Sean Couturier missing from the power play. Yeah. What are we doing? But it's a little surprising, one, for me, because while individual face-offs, like face-offs as a whole, might be a bit of an overrated stat, they're incredibly important on special teams. And Sean Couturier is very good at winning face-offs.
Okay, that is true. However, and this is a flip side argument, because I mostly agree with you, but I do want to make this point. It probably matters less if you're on power play too.
That's fair. You're probably coming on the fly with about 30 seconds left. That's honestly decent argument. And Jett, in the preseason, won a ton of offensive zone draws.
Yeah, you said that. That's something you took notice
of. But
of.
typically, an 18-year-old up against NHL talent will lose a lot of face-offs.
Look, Bill, I will agree with you that it is funny. So here's why it's funny. And by funny, it's in like a raising my eyebrow, like here he goes again sort of way. Yeah. It's funny in that way. Not like I'm laughing at Sean Couturier. No. But the Flyers, the way they've structured their power play units, you have 2 defensemen, 8 forwards. That means that you, in your forward core, you have 9 top 9 forwards. 8 of the top 9 forwards in the opening night lineup are on the power play. There is only one top 9 forward who is not on the power play, and his name is Sean Couturier.
See, this is why we need Charlie here for that sort of math. That makes it so much funnier. It's like he's being singled out. Yeah. And listen, again, I know Sean Couturier is not Sean Couturier from a few years ago. I am well aware. But you do have a guy who is the captain of the team, a respected veteran. There is often in these circumstances deference paid to veterans. He's had a couple of 30-goal seasons.
And more importantly, because we talked about this on the show a lot, power play time, while yes, fixing the power play is a major thing for them because they know how bad it was, it's also a reward. And it's also a punishment if you don't get it.
Yes. That is like the way to... If you're trying to prove a point to one of your top guys, and it's like, well, I need to play him. Yeah, like, I can't just not play. I mean, John Tortorella.
That's right. It is John Tortorella.
McDavid, you're not playing tonight. Sit down. But if you are trying to prove a point to one of your top guys, but you still want him for his regular shift, you take away the power play time, because power play time is where you typically, not on this team, but most of the league, racks up points, and you get paid for scoring points.
Right.
If you don't have power play time, it's exceedingly more difficult to score those points. I see where you might be Sean Couturier and be like, are you kidding me? Like, this 18-year-old who is like,
here we go again.
Yeah, like, I had a bad year last year. Absolutely. But this kid was in high school last year. I bet you he wouldn't have had a very good year in the NHL either. Like, what are we basing? But I do believe that power play time is a tool that they can use to give Luchanko for him to focus on offense.
Oh, I agree. No,
because he is going to be doing so much. He's the 3C. Like, no matter what the coaches tell him, no matter like, this is going to be your job. You're going to be checking a lot.
Yeah. And in fairness, like, if he's going to be here, you want to play him on the power play.
Yeah.
Because you want to give him the full look. It's a 9-game audition. I know Danny, poo-pooed it a little bit. He's like, well, we could send him back whenever. Obviously, it matters from a contract standpoint. But John Tortorella more or less said a few hours later, like, yeah, it's the 9 games, and then we'll make a decision. Yeah. Like, that is the audition. So if you're giving him an audition, give him an audition. Give him an audition everywhere. And that, it seems like, is what they're going to do. They're obviously putting him with, he's not on the top line, but Farabee and Brink can score. They got some talent. He's on a power play. No, it's not the top unit, but it's a power play. They do have one more guy than the other team. I know that didn't matter that much last year for the Flyers, but it theoretically should. And apparently, according to Tortorella, they're going to use him on PK a bit too.
The PK, I want him on so bad just because he gets a stick on a puck. It's a breakaway. Yeah. Also, the power play, I will say, like, if they're regrouping, he's on power play 2s, 45, 30 seconds left, whatever. That speed to gain the zone could be very helpful, like in a limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're not killing 10 of those 30 seconds in the neutral zone. That could be helpful too. Maybe this kid comes in and is a major contributor right away. He has some tools.
Yeah, I will say that regardless of how Jett Luchanko ultimately develops a two-way player as a guy who can chip in with offense, I have zero doubts in my mind he is going to be a great penalty killer. He might be a great penalty killer right now, right off the jump. It is very possible.
You could say for an 18-year-old, he's not ordinary. And that's really, really important because at Bet365, our presenting sponsor each and every single day, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365 because Bet365 has over 90 million users worldwide, and they live stream over 780,000 events each year. One of those things that just makes Bet365 never ordinary. It's the early payout offers for the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. We have the NHL for real starting up this week. I guess it started over the weekend, but no one could watch those games, so it doesn't count. But the real season actually begins this week. You want to get in at Bet365. And if your team, say you have a money line bet on, I don't know, the Flyers in Vancouver Friday night, guess what? They go up 3-0. You get paid no matter what happens. They fall apart at the end. Sam Ersson lets a tough one in. Maybe they get a little bit of that empty net luck. Suddenly, Flyers, they didn't win. But you already did because they had that 3-0 lead. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use code PHLY365 to sign up. Deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, total, player props, futures, and more. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so download the Bet365 app today. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And while we are here, I got to tell you, you want to have that extra money. You want to be able to have that money to spend on a little bit of recreational gambling, then you got to make some other smart financial decisions. The smartest financial decision you can make today is switching from a big bank to TrueMark Financial Credit Union. You've heard me say this before. Why do you want to do it? It's the ownership structure. Banks, they're looking to make money for themselves, whereas a credit union like TrueMark, you are themselves. You are the one. You are the member. They're trying to hook you up. Credit unions are not-for-profit financial co-ops owned by their members. And if you live or work in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, or Philadelphia County, that would be you. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA as an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit TrueMark.com/PHLY. All right, so that's the Jet part of this. We are never getting to this Metro Division preview.
Yeah, we'll do it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do some.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for tomorrow's show, Metro preview. Alexei Kolosov. some interesting answers in there. Again, you asked, like, is the relationship good? And Danny was like, yeah, I think so. But there was a part where Danny's speaking about Kolosov, and he goes, he felt like he needed another year in the KHL, or maybe he was ready for the NHL. I'm not really sure. I was like, shouldn't you be?
Well, it seemed what he was implying was for Kolosov, ideally, it was either or. It was, I want to stay in the KHL unless I'm going to be an NHL goalie. And that was more or less what Danny said a couple weeks ago when we talked to him. That was the way he characterized Kolosov's demand. It was the same thing. It was just couched in a much friendlier way this time because now Kolosov is actually here.
Yeah. And we all thought that's what Danny said.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of Russians would like.
Right.
I don't want to play in the AHL. That sounds bad. I would love, if you're flying me first class, private charter, dope. Yeah, I'll be in the NHL. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in my home country. And I don't think that's necessarily insane. Like, I don't think, Cole, he's a bad guy for thinking that.
Same. I made that point.
But he signed a contract. That's what it came down to. And he's here. Apparently, he's looked good in Phantoms camp as well. I'm looking forward to seeing more Alexei Kolosov. I bet you sometime this season.
Well, I think the most notable part of the Kolosov discussion today with Danny was Danny Briere, and he did a good job, from a public relations, talking to the media, presenting it to the fan standpoint. He did a very good job because it wasn't disingenuous, but it was framed in as positive a way as he could. Really what he acknowledged, and this is what we wanted from him from the jump in terms of after Kolosov came over, talk to the media and explain the situation. He acknowledged that they have not ruled out the possibility of loaning him back to the KHL at some point this year. Now, why is that notable? It's notable because 2 weeks ago when camp started and we talked to Danny, Danny straight up said, we have no interest in a loan. That he has a contract. We believe he's best served developing here. He needs to come here and honor his contract. What that says, what he said today, is that without straight up saying these words, the Flyers gave a little bit. The Flyers gave a bit, and that was how they were able to bridge this gap, was that they probably, and again, he didn't say this specifically, but based on what he said, you can infer this is what it was, is that the two sides talked, and Danny was willing to be like, okay, to get you over here, we will leave the door open where if in 2 months, both Sam Ersson and Ivan Fedotov look like quality NHL starters. Neither of them have gotten hurt. We're feeling good about our NHL tandem. We've gotten 2 months out of you, or however long it is, out of you in the AHL under our guidance where we can watch you and you can, get an idea of what it's like to play in the North American game. If it doesn't look like there's anything happening from a movement standpoint, we are now willing to be open to the idea of loaning you back midway through the year to spend the rest of the year in the KHL, rather than basically saying, no, you're coming over here and you ain't leaving until the Phantoms are done their season. That was a very significant cave on Danny's part. I don't necessarily think it was the wrong move. This isn't me being critical of Danny. My point was always the Flyers need to figure out a way to deal with this problem and get it resolved. And they got it resolved. He's here. He played in a Phantoms preseason game. So it's not even like there is concerns that he's going to go AWOL or whatever. He is in a Phantoms jersey. He is playing in Lehigh Valley in Allentown. But it is noteworthy to point out that this was a cave on Danny's part. There was significant movement. There was obviously significant movement on Kolosov's part because he's here. Yeah. But there was also movement on Danny's part to get him here. This was not a Kolosov showed up with his tail between his legs and acquiesced to everything the Flyers wanted. There was movement on both sides here.
And we assumed as much, but it was good to hear from Danny today. And I think it's a strong bet for Danny to make, not just to get him over here, just because you want him, but because if you... when Danny was asked about the Cutter situation and it relating to the Kolosov situation, he's like, this is two guys from outside. They haven't been in here yet. Kolosov came over for a little, but that didn't really count. We abandoned him in a hotel.
Oh, my God.
Just threw some food on a plate and slid it under the door every day and said, hope to see you at the rink.
It's obviously not what happened.
That is not what happened. That is not what happened. It's just the way it was presented at one point.
Right.
But Danny said, inside, we feel the culture is very strong. And I even said, like, look at the number of guys who resigned here. Like, guys want to stay. Maybe they just need to get a look at what it's like in here. Well, now you have him. Now he can get that look. Now he can become a part of it. And if it's as strong, if this culture, whatever it is you're building here, is as strong as you believe it is, then he won't want to be loaned back to Russia.
Right. I think it was
a bet worth making.
No, I think that's the hope.
If you believe in the culture.
Yeah. And again, you had to figure out a way to resolve this. And look, in no way, shape, or form am I saying that, like, oh, I was the reason why they brought Kolosov over. But I do think that the negative reaction to this, like, that played a role. I don't think the Flyers ideally want to loan him back to the KHL. I don't think they wanted to open that door even a little bit. They want him to be here. They want him to start his North American career and stay over here for as long as they want him here. But Danny and the Flyers apparently came to the conclusion, and I think in no small part, it might be because of negative responses, they came to the conclusion that, okay, we are high on this kid. We are going to cave a little bit here. And I think they caved in a meaningful way. And you made an interesting point about the culture. I thought one thing that was funny, and it was Danny at his best, where basically when he was talking about Kolosov, he was like, yeah, and from what I've heard, the boys took Kolosov out. And he's like, and I don't know where, and I don't know if I want to know where, but they took him out somewhere.
He's like, they didn't tell me where or anything. And he just had like that friggin' grin, that grin of Danny's that you're like, I see what you're doing here. The funny part would be like, Danny. It's like, oh, like,
this is all we needed. Like you're thinking, oh, they took him to a strip club. They actually took him to like Applebee's.
It's in the $1 margaritas, $1 Long Island iced teas. They had a great time. Yeah, have 6, 7 of those, man. All right, I have one more thing from Briere's presser I want to get to.
Okay,
it's Sealski's question about roster building. Did you want to get to anything else before that?
No, let's do that because I got the sense that did not go over well on Twitter, and I knew it was not going to go over well with you.
Yeah, I wasn't following along on Twitter.
Yeah.
I watched the broadcast on Twitter, but I was doing a bunch of stuff today and just kind of was listening to
There are comments that I hear, like when a coach or a player or a GM says it, and I just like wince because I think to myself, ooh, people aren't going to like that one.
So Sealski asked about roster building, and it was like, how many of the great players, and Danny jokes, like, 20. I want 20 guys like Mishkov. And he's like, yes, you want as many great players as possible. But as we've said, like, unless some of the dudes they already have take major steps, it doesn't seem as if it's going to be very easy to acquire the high-end talent we so badly want.
Right.
And Danny was like, yeah, we're probably not going to have another first overall pick. And my question was, when was the first one?
Yeah, I thought that too.
But he just kind of starts talking like, there's multiple ways. And he goes into the tanking and the luck you need. I found it very funny that he referenced, well, even if you do the tank and you get the high picks, then you need to do it. You need to be lucky enough to do it in years when the players are really good.
And he's right.
And he's right. And that's why you do it for like 4 or 5 years. You get one Nolan Patrick and give up. Like, it's probably not enough. That's why you need to do it consistently.
Right.
But they have chosen not to. And good, because I'm probably going to get to cover playoff games this year, and that's fun. But
I don't think our viewership would be quite as high if they were destined to finish in the bottom 4.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not.
So he's going into the different ways it can be done, and he references the Blues, and they were not a team.
That was when I went.
They were not a team with high-end talent, superstars. Like, Pietrangelo is probably a star, and he is. He also won in Vegas. Like, he's an excellent defenseman.
Great defenseman. Especially then when he was truly in his prime.
Yes. Like that's his that might have been his walk year when they won. Like, that's awesome. Good for him. But like Tarasenko wasn't, the Sank show at that point. He was good, but he wasn't that guy.
Wasn't peak Tarasenko anymore, but he was still very good.
It was a good, deep team. It was not a special team like Colorado or Tampa Bay. That was the point. Danny has told us the goal is not to make the playoffs. The goal is to regularly compete for Stanley Cups. And I know you can't win the cup every year. Going on runs every year is very hard. The playoffs are insane. It's really tough to repeat. Like, you get hurt real bad.
Yeah.
Florida just started last season with like none of their guys. It was a miracle they got to where they did.
Yeah.
But The Blues are like the exact opposite of the team that Danny has told us they are trying to build. 2018, missed playoffs. 2019, won cup. 2020, lost first round. 2021, lost first round. 2022, lost second round. Okay. 2023, missed playoffs. 2024, missed playoffs. If this is the go-to example, you're looking at an aberration team. Like that, this is clearly the team that got lucky. They came into the Wells Fargo Center in January or February in last place in the league. Yeah. Jordan Binnington shut out the Flyers, and then they went nuts. He was amazing for the rest of the regular season. He was pretty good in the playoffs, and then they all just kind of came together. Yeah, I would take a cup. If Danny Briere had run on the ice in June and snatch the cup away from Barkov, I'd be like, yeah, we won. Time for a parade. I will take a cup any way it comes. But it's really difficult to do this, and if you're just trying to be the team that gets lucky, that seems even harder.
No, it's functionally, you know what it's kind of like? It's maybe not quite this far, but it's kind of like this. It's kind of like if you were interviewing a general manager of an NFL team, and they were like, well, what's your model? You know, what's the model to win a Super Bowl? And they were like, the 2017-2018 Philadelphia Eagles. Like, so your model is
get lucky
and have a backup quarterback, have the greatest playoff run a backup quarterback has ever had. Like, no, that's not a model. Like, it's awesome that it happened, and it was truly life-changing for me to watch. But, like, part of the reason why it was so life-changing was because it never should have happened.
Improbable. It was wildly improbable. Like, not only did they lose the quarterback, it was like 5 or 6 starters until anyway. Yes, that's very much what it's like. Like, oh, but they beat the Patriots. Yes, and the Patriots won 9. There's a difference here. They beat them that day. They won all the time. And that's what I thought we were going for. And again, dynasty is near impossible to do, especially in a cap
But
sport.
I don't think you're looking for a
it's
dynasty.
Not even dynasty. It's just the opportunity to win for a 5 to 8 year stretch, and hopefully you get one. And if you're lucky, is all hell too.
That's the thing. The way that you build what I would consider to be a true consistent cup contender is you put together a team where you get 5, 6, 7 shots at it. Where for a half decade, you are one of the 6 best teams in the league, true talent-wise. And look, a lot of times you're not going to win. But if you give yourself 5, 6, 7 bites of the apple, eventually you're hoping that you get that one year where the vibes are great and everybody stays healthy and your best players have the best year and your goalie isn't cold when the playoffs start. Like, that's how you do it. You have to give yourself a lot of chances, because if you only give yourself one chance, like that ultimately is what the Hextall era produced. The Hextall era produced one chance.
2020.
One chance. And is there a world maybe where there isn't a global pandemic and they ride the vibes and they win the Stanley Cup? Yes, that maybe happened in some parallel universe. The problem is that the Hextall rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, it produced one team that had a chance. And that's nowhere near enough, because everything has to break your way. And of course, because it's the Flyers, nothing broke their way. Like, literally the world shut down. But they should have been able to build a team that gave themselves 3, 4, 5 chances. Instead, they built a team that gave themselves 1, and they didn't do it, and then it fell apart.
This is just personally advice for Danny. Take it or leave it. You're the GM of the team, but maybe listen. At least reference Vegas. 3 trips to the Final Four in 6 years, and they come away with a cup. They traded for Eichel, traded for Stone. Things you might have to do. Not a ton of high draft pedigree guys. Aiden Hill put up a .932 in those playoffs, despite only making 88 career regular season starts in 6 seasons before those playoffs started. If you're gonna be this, okay, there's another way to do it, team. Reference the team that did it consistently. That's all.
I think the reason why they all hesitate to use Vegas is because of the weirdness of the expansion.
They all blame this expansion draft, and they don't blame themselves.
They do. But I 100% agree with you in that if you're looking at 2 teams that both did it without the, McKinnon, McDavid level superstar, Vegas, to me, number one, because they stayed very competitive for longer. You know, it wasn't just the Blues where they had 1 or 2 years where they were a true talent top 5 team, and then they got it done one of those years. The Vegas Golden Knights have been a true talent top 6 to 8 team for over half a decade. Like, they have been. They've been real good. So that's number one. Number two is just the fact that I want, like, if this is going to work without them having the ability to draft at the top of the draft in multiple years, I don't think the better path is, well, let's just collect a bunch of good players and then have them coalesce into this amazing unified team. It's going to be, let's get aggressive in the trade and free agent markets and go out and get really good players like Vegas did.
Yeah, and they're going to have to do that at some point.
And I think they know that. But this is why I winced when I heard the Blues. Because whenever a Flyers general manager or an owner or a chairman or whatever says the St. Louis Blues, all I hear in my head is, so you're not going to go after stars. That's all I hear. Whereas if you say Vegas, that tells me, oh, you're going to be aggressive and this is going to be real fun.
That's like, they've made so many moves, not just with the personnel, like the coaches, the GMs. They've done whatever it takes, and they should be the model. Like, yeah, they went out and got Eichel. They went out and got Pietrangelo. Like, you needed to make these moves, but like the Flyers won't even have to do. Hell, the Panthers.
Use the Panthers.
Like, the Panthers are a great.
I guess the thing with the Panthers though is they did have that core of the top 10 pick guys.
It just took a while
ago. Yeah, it took a while to build around.
It's been a long time since that happened, and honestly, Colorado kind of, I was listening to, I think it was Eric Johnson on Flyers Daily, talk about like how it went down in Colorado. And it's like, we think of them as like that fun young team that won the cup. And it's like, you know how long ago they drafted Gabe Landeskog?
Yeah.
Like, you know how
it was the Couturier draft.
Yeah. It was 5 years after they drafted Makar that they won the cup. Yeah. Like, it takes a while.
Yeah.
So I just,
and they only
stop referencing the Blues.
They only got Makar because they
were furious.
They dumped one of the guys who they thought was going to be originally part of the core in Duchesne.
Yeah. And they were furious when they lost that lottery.
Yeah.
They were horrible that year, and they end up with the 4th pick.
Yeah, well, Duchesne was Byron. But seriously, like, and that was the one really bad year when they got Makar.
Yeah.
But no, point being is that, yeah, it took Colorado some time, but they still did have the top lineup.
But just reference Vegas. Do me a favor. Yeah. The team that's consistently good, not the team that got lucky once. And it's... Do you think they'd reference the Blues as much as they did if it wasn't Craig Berube?
You brought that up before the show, and I do wonder if that plays into it because
he's everyone's buddy.
They so view Berube as like he's a culture guy. You know, the Blues won, at least in the way the Flyers and a lot of people around hockey tell themselves, they won because of the culture. And Berube is a guy steeped in Philadelphia Flyers culture. So they almost look at it as, like, that is an endorsement of our way because Berube is basically a Flyer.
If it wasn't for that bastard Ron Hextall, who's no longer a Flyer, and bringing in that loser Dave Haxtall because their names sounded alike, like, that's how they think.
He coached his kid in college.
I really think like that's they are retroactively being like, oh no, actually Berube was the coach for this team, but Hextall ruined it because he was listening to analytics or something. Anyway, all right. I think that's probably it from the Briere. And I really don't like doing a negative show today. I know it took that turn. But there were just some answers that I was like, what are we doing here, Danny?
The Blues thing is tough. It's tough to hear because it really all just goes back to the high-end talent thing. Because everybody has been pushing, like, you need high-end talent. Okay, well, we got Mishkov. Who else do they have? Well, we'll see. You know, like Gnomes, Underpants, South Park, like step 2 Profit, like that sort of thing. It's like, well, we need to get high-end talent. Well, how are you going to get it? We'll get it. When you hear them compare themselves to the Blues, you do wonder, is the plan really just never to get it? And just be like, well, we got Mishkov, and then the rest of it's going to be Mishkov and vibes.
If Ryan O'Reilly has that 1 year, well, what if he doesn't?
What if he doesn't?
All right. Before we go any further, however, Oh, you know what time it is. It's time for 1-800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so you know they've got copycats. But what the copycats can't beat Empire on is quality, service, or speed. So what do? Just advertise, the lowest prices. We'll promise you the lowest prices. You know why? Because they're putting flooring in their home that they wouldn't put. They're putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in their own. The Empire philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. The Empire team scours the globe looking at thousands of the latest styles to make sure they're putting the perfect flooring in your house. And the virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details. While we're here, I got to tell you about Glatt Hair Restoration. That's right, our friends at Glatt Hair Restoration, now under the direction of Dr. Morgenstern, a highly respected plastic surgeon. Each member of this team is exceptionally trained, brings 30 plus years of industry experience because hair restoration is all they do. So now you get the same peerless approach to care, same expert team, same unmatched Glatt system, same state-of-the-art location, and the same stellar results now under the direction of Dr. Morgenstern. They have all sorts of different ways to help restore your hair, from laser light therapy to non-invasive TED treatments, PRP and stem cell restorations, and so much more. Bald is now optional with Glatt Hair Restoration. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit GlattHairMCTR.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started today. All right, man, I got to be honest with everybody. This hasn't been my best show. That game took a lot out of me last night, Chuck. I am struggling. I am happy you are in the mood to talk today because I got very little. I am happy we are through the reads. But it is time to get into today's division preview.
You know what John Tortorella would say? It's not about how well you do the skate test. It's just about finishing.
I wish we had a Blue Chew read right now. I want to do. Last year, remember, I was trying to do division previews for 2 weeks, and stuff kept happening, so we just kept not doing them.
Yeah, because it's the Flyers.
And you were like, oh, I don't care about any of this. So you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna do the Metro. We'll probably not be able to finish it today because there's 12 minutes left in the show.
Right.
But I have some odds here to win the cup and win the division from our friends at Bet365. And just take a look at the off seasons, and because I have the Flyers in the playoffs mentally, in our season prediction, I put yes, and then I just start thinking of the 8. Okay, it's 3 from each division. Atlantic could very well send two wild card teams. Where do the Flyers fit? All right, let me look at this thing. So let's start at the top of the division. Last year's President's Trophy winners, last year's division champions, the New York Rangers, 13-1 to win the cup, plus 260 to win the division. They are not the favorites to win the division. Not a crazy offseason for them. They did add Riley Smith for whatever that's worth. They do have some young guys, Fox, Shesterkin, Lafreniere. They have some good young players.
I do.
Keandre Miller. But you look at the core. Panarin turns 33 this month. Chris Kreider is 33. Riley Smith is 33. Trocheck is 31. Trouba will be 31 in January. Zibanejad's 31. That's 4 of their top 5 from scorers from last year, at least 31 years old. I wouldn't say the window's closing for the Rangers because I think they have enough young guys to have a second wave at some point. But there will be a step back eventually. It's kind of now or never for the Rangers.
Well, that's what Jacob Trouba straight up said. Now, granted, a lot of that I think is because he knows it's now or never very much for him.
Yeah, they want to trade him, and he's like, nah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's now or never for him. I don't know if I totally agree with that, though. Look, here's the thing with the Rangers. a big part of this is dependent upon whether they are able to keep Shesterkin. Like, that's huge, because if they lose him, and they're obviously going through the contract negotiation there, if they lose him, then things start getting concerning. Panarin's still real good, man. He's still real good.
Yeah.
And I don't see much slippage in his game. Like, he's not as good of a play driver as he used to be, but man, he can still score the lights out. He's still real good. Adam Fox is still very much in his prime. So if you got those three, you're pretty good. And then I think that the two big pieces, I think, for the Rangers that, and I say this as someone who covers the Flyers, I wouldn't particularly love it if the Rangers are really good, but I did pick them to go to the Cup final, so I think they're going to have a good year. I think Lafreniere is going to be a beast this year because he took a big step forward last year, and he then in the playoffs took an even bigger step forward from where he was in the regular season, when every time I watched the Rangers play, Lafreniere was the best freaking player on the ice on a team that has Panarin and Fox. So I am very, very bullish on Lafreniere. And a guy who's going to be real big for them is Hedl. Because Hedl, if you remember, missed basically all of last year with that injury. He's back. He's only 25. And the year before last year, it was kind of his semi-breakout. He had 20 goals, 40-plus points. If he's healthy and Lafreniere takes a step, I think they could be real good.
I'm just looking at
and they're already real good. They won the President's Trophy last year.
They just won the President's Trophy. They're already real good. And it's like, are all these guys in their prime yet? But the other side of the roster is aging.
It is.
So it is this weird balancing act right now. I was just looking at Swayman's contract. 8 years, $8.25 million. And this is a guy who been a tandem goalie. He did take over the number one spot over Ullmark last year.
Yeah, he's been a playoff guy.
He's been a tandem goalie for his whole career. $8.25 million.
Oh, Shesterkin's breaking 10.
Shesterkin's got to get at least 10.
He's breaking 10 on the cap at $10 million. I would be shocked if he didn't. And from all accounts, Shesterkin and his camp is looking at this as a precedent-setting negotiation.
Well, that's Swayman was like, I can't just screw over all the other goalies and take some team-friendly deal. Yeah. And this is a guy who, while very good, does not have anywhere near the resume of Igor Shesterkin. No. And that's even with Shesterkin last year. He ended up with pretty good numbers, but 901 save percentage in the first 26 games. That's like through January 11th. And then a 922 for the final 29 games. And then in 16 playoff games, just a real casual 926.
Yeah, he was amazing to play. He's a great goalie. He's probably him and Hellebuck are the two best goalies in hockey. And whoever you pick is the best one, like, I'm not going to begrudge you.
Yeah. He was awesome last year, even though his like full season numbers weren't his typical 920 plus. He was still real good. But while he was struggling at 901, not exactly struggling, but
better than league average,
wasn't himself dominant.
Yeah, true.
Jonathan Quick was amazing for them in the first part of the year. 38-year-old, now 39-year-old Jonathan Quick has had a career resurgence there as Shesterkin's backup. It makes me so mad when the way like Green Bay just gets quarterbacks in a row. Like, them getting goalie after goalie is absolutely freaking infuriating to me.
Well, some of it is luck, to be sure, because like if they knew Igor Shesterkin was going to be Igor Shesterkin, they would have taken him in the first round, not in the mid rounds. So there's that. But and he is apparently scaling back a bit, but having Benoit Allaire as their goaltender guru there has been a huge part of it, because he's just been able to, like, I don't know if Shesterkin would have been bad without Allaire, but he certainly helped. And how many goalies over the last 15 years do they bring in and they stink, and then they become good and they trade them for something?
I just remember there was a point, Richards and Carter, that era of the Flyers, like kind of had Lundqvist's number. Mm-hmm. And so there were 2 games in a row that they started Valakat and he shut the Flyers out. Yeah. It's like, really? This is the solution to beating the best goalie in the world? Get shut out by the backup?
Georgiev, Cam Talbot. Like, how many goalies have they had over the last 15 years where they join the Rangers, become good, then the Rangers flip them for a second-round pick or a first-round pick or something, and then everywhere else they're mediocre at best?
All right. Yeah. So I think we both chose them to go to the Cup.
Yeah, I have the Oilers winning.
Yeah, we have the same Cup final, different winners. Yep. I think that's how it went down. Yeah, I have Rangers over Oilers. So I guess I should.
The thing I will say though about the Rangers, I think the Rangers are going to take a step back in the regular season this year. I think, like, when I'm picking who's going to win the playoffs and who's going to win the conference, I think the Rangers aren't going to be as good during the season. I think they are going to lose more games. I think there will probably be stretches where they struggle a bit, and people are like, what's wrong with the Rangers? I just think that when the playoffs hit, they're going to get in, and then I just have a hunch that this is the year they go through, at least to the Cup final.
Next up, coming in second last year with 111 points, the Carolina Hurricanes, 11-1 to win the Cup, plus 210 to win the division. Some interesting subtractions and some like big names for us additions, including Sean Walker and Shane Gostisbehere, which is fun. But what do you think of Dr. T's team this year? It's been they've been like the sexy pick for so long. It's like they're Cougars at this point. Like, it's been like 10 years. We've been like, oh, you know who's good? And they always have been in the regular season. And it just doesn't seem to ever translate to any sustainable playoff success. Is this finally it for them, maybe?
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's it for them. I think the whole reason why that team is run, what manifests their intelligence is that they stay good for as long as they have. And I think Eric Tulsky is going to do a good job over the next few years of ensuring that their window continues to hold, that they still have chances, and they're just hoping that one of these years the breaks go their way and they go on a run and they win it all, because they have a team good enough to do that. Now, as you said, they haven't done it yet, so you got to do it at some point for all of this to matter. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not worried that they're going to crash out. Like, I think there's some people who are like, is this the year where they take a step back? They lost some defense guys. I think Rob Brind'Amour is too good of a coach.
They still have enough pretty damn good players.
They still are a deep team. They're a well-built team. But I do think this will be a test of Rod Brind'Amour's system.
Yes.
Like, it's not going to be a test of like, oh, well, can they make the playoffs? Like, no, they're a good team. They're more than talented enough to make the playoffs. But if they, again, have 105 plus standings points with the guys they lost, I will say, yeah, Rob Brind'Amour might be the best coach in hockey, or at least top 3, because they should take a step back based on the fact that they are replacing what? They're replacing Brett Pesce and Brady Shea with Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker. Yeah, that should be a step back.
You would think.
And
it's been I do like this idea of them being tested, and it just feels like it's been so long for them, but some of these guys are still pretty young. It feels like everyone kind of feels the same way. Like, yeah, they're not as good as they were last year, but maybe just any shakeup is if it's going to be a next level season for them, like, well, maybe a shakeup is what they needed, because it's just kind of stagnated there for so long, where they've had the good regular season and then nothing happens in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe it's Sean Walker. Maybe that little bit of a shakeup. That would be fun. Yeah. Before we go any further, I have to thank all of the diehards joining us live today and listening around the world. Thank you very much. We could not do what we do here at PHLY without our diehards. If you're not one, sign up at allphly.com. All right, so we got through 2 teams in the Metro Division, barely. And it's time for Super Chats. All right, just one super chat. Perfect timing. Gary B joins in. Charlie, did Jett and Matvei Michkov play on the same line at all during camp?
I don't think so.
They were together in the rookie series.
Yeah, the rookie game.
Game.
But in the actual camp, I don't believe so.
I had someone asking me, like, he liked the way they looked in the rookie games. Why aren't they maybe going to get more time together? And perhaps they will down the line this season.
If he stays all year, I'm sure they'll get some time together.
Absolutely. And if maybe he has some power play success. Well,
you move them up.
Anyone could help the power play, I'm sure.
Yep.
Danny, that actually did really make me laugh today. Danny talking about the power play the way we talk about the power play. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not asking for top 5, top 10 here. Like, if you're 22nd in the league,
we would have made the playoffs.
Like, he talks about them the exact way we do, and that really made me laugh. But I had someone tweeted, like, well, I wanted to see more of Jett and Michkov together. Like, they look good in the rookie game. And my thing is, like, Yeah, it would be cool to play them together, but we're going to be counting on Michkov to be like, maybe not first liner, but top 6, one of the top 2 lines. Mm-hmm. And that simply is not going to be Jett Luchanko's role to start the year.
Yeah, at least not off the jump.
Now, we'll see what happens with Sean Couturier. We'll see how this whole thing unfolds, and maybe Jett Luchanko is the 1C by December. But crazier
Ryan
things have
Poehling
happened.
was the 1C for a few games.
Exactly. This guy's basically already Ryan Poehling. Like, who knows? Maybe he's a scorer. Maybe he's what I thought Ryan Poehling was when I picked him to win the Calder that one year.
There you go. But Gary, to answer your question, yes. Michkov and Luchanko did play together in that one rookie game because Michkov only played the one.
Yeah.
Since the start of the start of camp, though, no, he is not. Michkov mostly played with Frost. Now it appears he's going to start the season on a line with Konechny and Couturier. There was never really any Luchanko-Michkov testing out in main NHL camp. There was not.
All right. And with that is all the time we have for you today on PHLY Flyers. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Set that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m., our typical non-game day time. We will be off on Wednesday, though, but fear not. I will be pre-recording a mailbag episode that you can check out right here on the YouTube. Hit us up with mailbag questions on the Twitter at PHLY_Flyers, and I'll answer them on Wednesday's show. All right, follow us. That was Twitter. Follow the podcast. Wherever you find those, just search PHLY Flyers. All right, that'll do it. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.